Hello, everybody. Hello, Mr. Brandon. How are you today?
I'm great. How you doing today, Kathy?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good, except that our province right now, there's a lot of smoke coming through from the forest fires in BC. For those that are watching and don't know, I'm in Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta, and yeah, we're pretty covered in smoke right now. So we're all kind of suffering with like coughs and hacks and sore throats and headaches and whatever the hell else is going on. So
wow, that is intense.
What's that?
That is very intense. My goodness, like you don't see anything around you, and the whole atmosphere is changing. That'd be a little alarming.
Yeah. Yesterday, I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. I was like, why is my throat on fire? And I'm coughing all the time. And maybe I'm getting sick. And then, of course, you're like, Corona. And they're like, no, I'm not getting Corona. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, smoke fires. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Could you imagine if we like did not have like communication back and forth between different areas, and all of a sudden you just see your sky turning colors and you have no idea what is going on?
Right? Yeah.
My goodness.
You have to wait for the guy on the horse to come in, with his little roll of whatever, his little delivery from like the old days where they would have to go town to town with their little roll of paper and, oh yeah, this is happening.
That would be so scary. I couldn't imagine just not knowing, there is something actually going on.
Exactly. So, guys, welcome to our live show. So this is the show where we do live interviews with different guests. And these are, either spiritual guests or these are guests that have had some sort of maybe possible paranormal experience. Basically, it is the paranormal or supernatural realm that we are kind of diving into. Before we, continue on a little bit, I just want to say, guys, make sure that you have click subscribe, click like. It really does help support the channel. And make sure you watch all the videos that are, well, you don't have to watch all of them, but specifically maybe perhaps for your zodiac sign. And watch our, on Wednesdays, we have our live show where we do live readings right here on Wednesdays at 6:00 p.m. So these are for our subscribers. So when you click the notification bell, click subscribe, you can not only join the show, but you will get the notifications that we are live. So how about we bring on our guest today?
Let's do it.
All right. So our guest today is Derek Everette. So Derek is a podcaster and he's had a unique experience. So we're going to bring him on and say hello. Hello, Mr. Derek.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So, when I put your title into, the YouTube thing today, I basically just said, podcaster. And I was like, I don't know how much I want to reveal in the taglines at this time. I just want to kind of leave it and, just have that conversation with you directly in regards to, because this is mostly up, like I said, paranormal, supernatural type of show. So you and I met 10 or 11 years ago, almost 10, 11 years ago, I guess now. Hey?
Yeah, I'm not 100% on the date myself. I think it was the fall of 2010.
Okay. Yes. I think it was about that time too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had just joined Edmonton Paranormal. I remember I was pretty much a brand new investigator at that time. And we had the privilege of coming to your home.
Right. Which at the time we had only been here a year or so at that time. It was still a relatively new house for us.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, we moved in here in the summer of 2009.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually did not know that. I thought that you guys had been there for a while. So that's new information for me. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so you guys had some unique experiences going on in the home at the time. Is that right? Or how did it all start?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's start at the beginning.
I had one experience that really, really shook me up. But at that time, I quickly came to understand it as, and the term slipped in my head, sleep paralysis.
Right. That's
So
right.
I had an episode that at the time I came to believe was sleep paralysis. My view on that is shifted somewhat, but that can be told a little later on.
Okay.
So everybody in this house at that time knew that I'd had this episode.
Mhm.
And then in the coming months, my who was my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, started noticing.
I just want to explain to people what sleep paralysis is really fast. So sometimes with sleep paralysis, it is that feeling of where you wake up and it feels like you're being held down, or maybe perhaps you're having some sort of, you may see, visions. This could, this for most people, it kind of comes up as like, it feels like, I guess, what you would explain as a negative or a demonic type of experience, but you can't move, you can't, you feel like you're stuck to the bed. So I just wanted to.
Maybe if I could take 30 seconds and elaborate on my experience with it personally too.
Yeah,
I've had two such experiences in my life. It was the second one that occurred in 2009, which is the significant one that to this story.
Right.
And basically, it was the middle of the night. We had a newborn baby who was sleeping in our room at the time. And I woke up in the middle of the night, was unable to move, like you had said. And I saw, there's no other way to say it. I saw a demon, hovering above the baby. But I was unable to move and do anything about it. And that's what really shook me up. And even though it was my second such experience in my life, because the baby was involved with this one, it really bothered me for days and led me to a bunch of internet research, which is how I came to understand what sleep paralysis even was. I didn't know what it was before that time. And then finding out about sleep paralysis and finding out that there had been so many stories like mine, not only contemporary stories, but throughout history, really put me at ease for a couple of years. But then that led, like I said, a few months down the road, my wife at the time was starting to encounter funny things, mostly around the baby's toys, electric toys coming on when nobody was in the room, that sort of thing. I have to be honest enough to say that it's long enough ago now, I don't recall for sure if I specifically witnessed that or not.
Right. I know I did, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. There was so many stories around that 6-month period of odd things happening in the house that 10 years on now, I have a hard time remembering what I personally was witness to and wasn't.
Right.
So I have to be honest about that. But there was certainly a lot of claims of people seeing unnatural things occurring, mostly around electric toys, something to do with the baby, mostly in the baby's room.
Yeah.
And that was in the months that followed what I then believed was a sleep paralysis experience.
Right.
So all of these things kind of culminated, and without my knowledge, my wife at the time phoned the Paranormal Society. I wasn't told about any of this until the day before you guys came or something.
Probably. And here we show up with all this equipment. I think the first time
there was a couple of preliminary visits, and then in the interview, you guys were actually pretty professional about it, I thought.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, because again, it wasn't like it was 10 years ago, and I remember. it was one of my first, and since then, you have hundreds, since that time that you're like, but I remember yours really stuck out because I remember during one of the preliminary interviews, we had actually come in. I was with another investigator, and I remember we were in your daughter's room. And one of the questions that we were asking, we'd asked, several questions, and, nothing really seemed to be going on at that moment. And then we said, if you want us to leave, just let us know. And I just about peed my pants. I'm not lying, because all of a sudden we heard this goodbye coming from the toy box, literally at that same moment. So when you're talking about the electronic toys that were going on, we both sat there. I think the blood drained from my face, and I just about peed, and I was like, was that real? You get into that place of, did this literally just happen? Did we hear this? And so we had called in your wife at the time, and she went to the toy and found it. And like, we went through a few toys, and then she says, I think it might be this one. This is the only one I can think of. And she's like, but there's no batteries. There's no batteries in any of these toys. Like, there's no reason for this thing to be talking,
Well,
you know?
Can I interject for a moment about the no batteries thing?
Yeah.
So it's important just to stress from where I was coming from at the time. I didn't believe in any of this. And
Right.
I to varying degrees, I have complicated views on it all.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was really apathetic to the whole thing. Like, I just didn't believe in it. I had resolved the situation I had experienced with this sleep paralysis definition. And although there was odd things happening with the toys, I had written it off to like wiring problems, right? So we took the batteries out of most things to prevent it. So that was, I recall that. And that's what made that a little particularly odd.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was just so right at the perfect timing, you know.
Oh, God.
If you don't want us to be here, just let us know. Like, give us some sort of sign. Goodbye.
I would run out of there. Oh no.
And then I remember the weird thing is I remember I was trying to explain to one of our investigators, also, because after we had gone home, I had phoned, like the lead investigator. Was it the lead? No, it wasn't the lead investigator. It was one of the other investigators. And we were talking about this because we were setting up, trying to, how are we going to set up the place and all of this other stuff, kind of, remembering the layout. And I was trying to explain this experience. And it was so weird because through the phone, I literally heard goodbye. And he heard it too. And I said, like, was that, what the hell was that? Like, it came right through the phone. And I remember, it still actually kind of gives me shivers because it was just so profound that all of a sudden, you would hear that same thing coming right through the phone lines when you're not even in the house. And I don't think I ever told you about that. I don't think I had ever mentioned that to you, Derek.
I don't think so.
And I was like, oh crap, we're in for it. And again, being a brand new investigator, I was just like, what the hell just happened? So it was like, I was like, I'm going to hang up the phone because I don't actually feel safe being on the phone at this moment. Like, I'm just going to hang up and do my thing and go to bed.
Was that on a landline or a cell phone?
At the time it was on a landline.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
it was a landline at the time. So that, for my phone anyway, I believe that theirs was too, but it was so loud. And I thought maybe that at first I thought maybe it was like a feedback from what I had said, because I was describing it and I said, this thing said goodbye. And then it was like seconds, and then it came through again. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that was feedback of some sort, but, usually you get feedback with a cell phone rather than the actual landline. And I said, but, and then he said, well, that actually didn't even sound like your voice. Like, that was not your voice. That wasn't the same voice that you had used to describe the incident. This came through as a completely different tone.
Gosh, that's weird. That is so weird. I mean, I know on landlines, I've heard other people's conversations before. Like if I was on a cordless phone that, was the landline. Yeah. I've heard that interference before, but you can usually tell because there's like a weird static or interference noise that kind of comes through. So I don't know. That's really interesting. And was it the exact same tone?
No, he said that it wasn't it sounded exactly like the toy.
Yeah.
And when I had described it to him, I was using my voice, I just said it,
but it sounded like the toy.
Right. Ooh. And so, it kind of set you back a bit because I was still in that. I'm not going to say I've never been skeptic in regards to the paranormal, but that was sort of that. It was like sitting in the bedroom, and all of a sudden hearing this and you're like, oh my gosh, you get those chills and you're like, oh, okay, something real just happened here. And you know, it was that experience, you know, so it was really different. So then did you find, Derek, that the investigation helped? Did it hinder? Like what is your viewpoint now looking back at this? Or even let's go through the investigation a bit.
Yeah, what was that like? What was it like to have strangers in your home kind of looking around?
I'll say this, at the time, like, I was a skeptic going in. And I mean, I'm still a little bit of a skeptic coming out, but when you're actually forced to deal with stuff, you know, it changes your perspective a little bit. You have to open your mind a little bit, right? I mean, it was still one of those things where I wasn't comfortable talking to people about it. I'm still not. Like, I don't talk, you know, people that know me, a lot of them will be surprised to even hear this story. I have not told
Thank you for being here and sharing.
No problem.
It's kind of coming out of the paranormal closet, right?
So I was forced to open my mind to it a little bit. And at the time I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to see what this experience is like. Let them do their investigation, see what happens. And it was an all night affair. There was, I don't want to exaggerate how many of you there were, but I think there was 8 or 10.
Yeah, there was a lot of us. I think.
Yeah. And they were in different rooms throughout the house, and there was multiple cameras set up. It was actually, especially for that time, for like 2010, I was really impressed at just the technology and the number of people that came and stayed all night long. So I'll say that I was thoroughly impressed by that and interested. Like, that's a lot of people. I mean, especially now that I have a little bit of experience trying to organize a podcast and some other things, it's tough to get 2 or 3 people on the same page at the same time. And to do 10 just with that sort of, like, at that level of technology you guys were using at the time, it was impressive. I got to say that. Speaking
of podcasts, I do want to tell everybody we are going to talk about Derek's podcast because he does have one live on YouTube as well. I've been honored to be a guest on Derek's podcast twice now. I believe once last year and once just recently, a couple of weeks ago, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later too. Sure. But yeah, it's I mean, it was a lot of work. I remember doing the investigations, you know, like, I mean, after a while you get so used to it that you're just cords everywhere. And I mean, I suppose somebody that's sort of just looking on going, how in the hell do you remember all of this stuff? And trust me, most of the time we were like, where does this go again? I don't remember where to pick this knob, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the immediate aftermath, things certainly didn't get any worse. I don't remember the specifics, but it did it calmed down in the months after that. But you had brought, at some point after the investigation, you had brought, I want to say it was a Wiccan of some sort here.
Yes, that's right.
Which is interesting to me to think about. I don't recall anything happening after that. It's interesting, like, who I am now, I don't think I'd have allowed that.
Right.
So it's kind of an odd thing for me thinking back, but it happened. And he did what he did, and I don't have memory of anything odd happening after that time.
Right. Yeah. And I think it was just really a basic house cleansing that he did. Nothing, nothing religious or, booting out, I guess, is the thing. It was more or less just sort of white lighting the house just to kind of keep it protected, from anything else entering into it at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I have nothing to report since late 2010.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned to me, so you had a little bit of a different viewpoint on things now, looking back on, and how would you, I guess, how has that changed a bit?
Well, I was going into all this, I was really apathetic towards anything to do with spirituality, religion, any of it.
Right.
I wasn't raised religious, and I just didn't have the time for it. Like, I can never say that, like, I can't say that I didn't, like, believe in God, because, like, just not believing something for sure, like, didn't make much sense to me either, but I just never really thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then this experience started me down a path that over several years led right to Christianity. I'm a committed Christian today. And a part of it, there's many, you don't convert in your 30s to Christianity easily. Right. So there's many, many, many different sections to it. But this was one small section. And the 2 experiences I had in my life that I had just written off as sleep paralysis played a part of it in it. right? Like, to me, there is a spiritual realm, and I feel comfortable saying that now because I saw it. I was temporarily there, right? And I understand wholeheartedly why other people would kill themselves looking for explanations to just, say that sleep paralysis, that's all it was. Science can explain this, right?
Yeah.
But when it happens to you, it's a different thing. It's kind of like being abducted by aliens. If you tell anybody, they're going to think you're nuts and write it off, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a lot of what prevents me from talking about it to this day. But I mean, I went through it. And yes, the sleep paralysis explanation made me comfortable for a long time because it could be explained. But then I started thinking about it. They say that sleep paralysis is, like, to simplify things, just your brain sending you, your half asleep brain sending you these images, right?
Right.
Well, that's what sight is. That's what vision itself is our brain processing the light passing through our eyes, right? Like, as a simpleton explanation. Yeah. So that's what sight itself is. And then I've read various articles. I believe they're called tetrachromes. Let me just, you can bear with me for a second. I just want to check something. I wrote this down in case I had to say the word. I don't want to get this wrong.
Better than I could have. I can tell you that.
Tetrachromats.
Okay.
Is what they're called.
I've never heard of that. What is it?
Well, they have an extra, it's a very small group of people that have an extra cone in the eye, which enables, like, most of us can see roughly, I believe it's 1 million shades of colors.
Right.
They can see 100 million. They can literally see 100 times more shades of colors than we can, right?
Okay.
Because they have this extra cone in their eye. And through computer and scientific testing, they have proven that now, that there is some people that can see that much more. So that proves that most of us are just missing things that allow us to see things that are in fact there.
Which makes sense.
So what else are we missing that, could allow us to see things that really are there? And I started thinking about all this stuff. And then it took me back to the sleep apnea experiences. Well, even science acknowledges that sleep apnea experiences like mine, and like Kathy alluded to, they almost always involve a demon, a demonic presence, evil. These millions of people around the globe today are experiencing this from time to time. And it has been historically so for centuries, millennia. Like, there's records going back thousands of years, hundreds of years, of people having this exact scenario. They wake up, they can't move, they see a demon, they feel evil itself. Yeah. Right? It's that same story, time and time and time again. Yeah. And so I combined all these things, the ability that we know for sure now we are missing things that allow us to see things that were always there. We just couldn't perceive it. This common experience throughout, like, different countries, different societies, different cultures, different times. It just overwhelmingly to me proved the existence of a spiritual realm.
I was just talking about that recently with, like, my Patreon group about the limitations on just our sight and just our vision. So it's interesting you're talking about this, because this is where I was telling people that you have to, in my personal opinion, if we can only see like 1/10 of a billionth of all the waves and light and, whatever is out there for us to be able to see, we have to have some other tool at our use to be able to sense or perceive them in some way. And for what I was describing, to my patrons, was that this is why I personally feel that psychic sensory of some kind helps us to understand and take in some of that extra information, that is out there. When a wave of some kind hits me, I can feel it. I might not be able to see it, or like the wind, right? You can't really see the wind, but you can see its repercussions. In the same way, I feel that that's what the psychic sense does for us. It helps us to perceive the things that we physically, literally cannot.
Well, when I first started, when I first started Edmonton Paranormal, I've always seen things in my head, I guess. And then once I started that, I actually started seeing things with my eyes. And that's where, you kind of get that impression, am I crazy? Like, what, like, how come I'm seeing this? I remember being in Canadian Tire one time, and I bumped into somebody and I was like, excuse me, sorry, and my daughter's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you crazy woman, like, who are you talking to? Because for me, I bumped into somebody, for her, she's like, mom's talking to herself in the middle of freaking Canadian. There was times we were driving and I'd bang on the brakes because I could see somebody running across the road, And again, the kids thought that I was nuts because, like, what are you doing? Like, you're, and it came to a point where I had to say, okay, like, look I can't see these things with my eyes anymore. Let's just keep them in my head, because that way I'm not affecting other people or causing accidents or, talking to walls by myself. But when I was younger, especially if I was drunk or, you high on weed or whatever, and you go to parties, I was the person that was like in the corner yapping away. And to me, I was having full blown conversations with people that no one else saw. So they would just leave me alone and they would be like, oh yeah, Kathy's talking to her friends again. Just let her be. And, it kind of got to that point where people were like, they were just used to it, I guess, from me, like, give Kathy a drink, then she has party tricks. She talks to
It's so interesting how much that we really can't see. And I've heard many people talk about sleep paralysis before, but I've never experienced it myself. I've never had that sensation. And I could imagine, it feeling like something pressed on you or holding you against your will. I know that, in the times where if I, had gotten drunk in the past and if I had blacked out, I felt like I was not in control at all. And just that taste of that is enough for me to be like, no, not interested, not doing it. I'm super connected to my body. Like, I don't like not having control of it. That would absolutely, freak me out. And then to see something on top of it, I don't know. That would be extremely chilling.
When you were going through that, when you were going through that, like, what were you feeling, experiencing? Like, where was your brain, like, through this? Like, what were you thinking?
I was in, life changes when there's a baby in the picture, right?
Yeah.
So the concern wasn't for me; it was for the baby. Like, to paint a more clear picture, we were in the bed and the baby was in a bassinet, kind of off to the left-hand side of me and more towards the foot of the bed.
Right.
And this evil thing was hovering above the bassinet. And I couldn't see in full color. It was like a blue hue was around everything.
Right.
And that blue hue was a common experience with the sleep paralysis I'd had years earlier. But anyway, so it was just basically me trying to get up to, your instinct is to protect the baby. And I simply couldn't. And then eventually unconsciousness just took over again. And I woke up a few minutes later and didn't sleep for a couple of days, wondering what the hell just happened.
Yeah. So you didn't have any other weird, strange occurrences or experiences? It was just that main one?
Personally, yeah. I mean, I'd had the sleep paralysis experience 20 years earlier too.
Right.
But,
and then the toys and stuff like that. But
right. Yeah. And two, I'd like to mention too, at the time, one of the things that I found comforting about sleep paralysis as an explanation at the time was that the demon I saw was over the bassinet. At that time, in 2009, when this happened, my favorite TV show was Supernatural.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the themes of Supernatural is a demon standing over a baby in a bassinet. So to me, that made sense, right? Well, there's this unconscious connection. I really like this show. This happened. So yeah, the sleep paralysis makes sense. But then I thought about it some more a time later. And this story, my story, like I said, dates back cross cultures, cross history, way before, like thousands of years before Supernatural was written. So no, it's these experiences, it's these sleep paralysis experiences with the demon that probably influenced and inspired the Supernatural story.
Oh yeah, for
Not
sure.
the other way around. Just my personal experience happened to come after I'd been exposed to it. So it is like there's a lot of pieces to it to try to put together.
And there's been a lot of reports of it being like the Hag, what they consider the Hag, some sort of demonic thing. The most that I think I have heard about the Hag the most, I guess. I don't know exactly the whole legend behind that, but that is one of the things that, that I've heard about the most. I remember my son had sleep paralysis, and I'm going to be honest, I do not want to put words in his mouth because I don't remember if he saw anything, but for whatever reason, he said that as soon as he wiggled a finger, he that pretty much brought him out of it. And then he went and read about it because he had done the same thing as you. He was like, I want to go and do research. Now, he was really young at this time. I think he was only about 9 or 10. And he went on Google and he's like, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go and do this research. But the interesting thing is, I mean, you know, with my son, he does see things, you know, he not so much, I would say at this point now, but he has in the past been very open and very, you know, psychically aware. Right. So it's really interesting that, you know, this happens. And then you kind of wonder, is it only those with some sort of, like you had said, maybe, you know, this extra cone in their eye, or maybe perhaps that they're aware of some sort of psychic sensation that they may have, or empathic sensation, or being sensitive, you know, to things around them in a different way, whatever you want to call it, whether it's psychic or sensitive, empathic, whatever.
Yeah.
That is so creepy to think about. I remember reading something about alcohol and how it influences, you know, your energy field, your connection with consciousness and the body, and how I heard somebody talk about how spirits that like to use people would like linger around these bars, you know, and kind of hang out and wait, and people would just get more and more faded. And then when they were totally, you know, either gone or able to be influenced, that's when that spirit or soul or whatever entity kind of came in. And what really creeped me out was right after I read this article, I looked, I was driving down the highway and I saw this billboard. It was for a vodka and it said, "Pour your soul out." And I'm like, oh, that is just so cringy to me. This is so weird. You know, I think it almost felt like a play on words. You know, when you drink, you talk so much and you pour your soul, right? And you tell everybody everything. Yeah. But at the same time, that notion, I mean, it's disconcerting to think about your soul just coming out of your body and having space and room in there for something else to come in. That just...
Can I pose a question?
Yeah.
What is it about us? And I went through this with my sleep paralysis experience very much, that when we understand just a small piece of what causes something, we're all of a sudden comforted and don't believe there's more to it. And an example of this is you brought up drinking, right? Mm-hmm. We drink, we have a scientific explanation as to what happens and what makes us feel funny and become more loose-lipped and more confident, right? Mm-hmm. We have a scientific explanation for that. For sleep paralysis, we have a scientific explanation for that too. We are so concerned with how things work that we've stopped asking why, right? Like, why does this happen to you? Like, why when you get drunk, does reality seem different? Why when you have sleep paralysis, can you see demons that weren't there before? And I read a book some time ago that dealt with the ancient Israelites, and it made a point that I found interesting when they talked about the way they perceived the world. And this book suggests that they saw the world the opposite of us. They were concerned with why and not with how. And a good example of this was the sun. To the ancient Israelites, the sun existed because God wanted us to see it through the day so we could do our work, right? They always knew there was a method, right? They would have assumed God had a method to make the sun, right? So now that we know now we know that it's a gas and everything we do know about it, we've stopped asking why. We just automatically say, well, couldn't have been God that constructed this, you know, big, crazy mass of fire in the sky. I mean, he did it to light the earth.
Yeah,
is the Christian explanation for this. Most people have stopped asking why. They just find out how something works, and that's good enough for them. And that troubles me too.
Well, and I mean, we can take that explanation into so many things, you know, whether it be political or whether it be, you know, government-led. Right? It's almost like people just stop asking the questions. People stop. Right. It's like they take that easy answer and they go, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to listen and go. Like, you know, it's almost like their brain has shut off to the like you said, the research as to why are you asking me to do this? Why are you, you know, why is this happening? What, you know, and I think that's that's one of the reasons why I particularly joined, you know, Edmonton Paranormal or becoming an investigator is because I couldn't I didn't understand a lot of the experience that I'd had all throughout my life. And then when it started happening with my kids, I was like, something's going on here and I got to figure it out because I don't know everything. I don't understand everything. And, you know, and when you're living in a house, like, you know, as you had said, I mean, you know, here you were in this house that is out of your control. It's, you know, things are happening that you don't have the control over. And it's easy to be in that place of, you know, when it's, you know, when a pipe bursts, okay, you fix the pipe. You know, toilet bursts, you fix the toilet. This happens, you fix this. But when you're in that place of, I don't know how to fix this, it gets very, very, you know, confused and lost. And I think that so many people, I believe you're right. Like so many people don't bother taking a look into the deeper concepts of a lot of things that are happening, not only in the paranormal and spiritual realm, but in our daily lives. We just sort of rush it over.
You know, I think it's,
yes, sir, go ahead.
I think it is happening in scale. I mean, I'm personally am a person who does ask the why before I'm going to fully accept understanding it. You know, I was brought to spirituality through studying science, through studying quantum physics. You know, I was brought to understand a higher energetic level of consciousness and the way that, you know, my own connection with spirits, source gods, you know, psychic, whatever it is. And so it was through science because I wanted to know why. I wanted to know my purpose. I wanted to know why we were even here. What are we doing as humans? But if you think about, you know, back, I don't know, you know, let's go back a few hundred years where philosophers and inventors and engineers, you know, it was more prevalent because we were trying to discover things. They were still few and far between, right? You know, there still was not that many. There was not enough people to ask the deeper questions and to go on the dive and to obsess over something and to figure out, okay, what makes this work? Why does this tick? And I still think there are some of us out there, you know, who are kind of, we have the access of the internet now, you know, we can access so many different things. And I think with that, it kind of takes away everybody else's need of looking more into things like, oh, well, it's probably on the internet. You know, I don't need to go figure it out, you know? So it's like that. I think there still are people that are out there. We just don't see them anymore because we're so bombarded with the, I don't know. To me, it's the charade, right? We're bombarded with manipulated images on the screen more than we are with deep, you know, dive deep into figuring out the reasons for something.
Well, we're bombarded with so much information that we things we do know now that there's not enough time to think about the things that we don't have the answers to.
This is true too.
And there's comfort in knowing things. Mm-hmm. And if you want to get into spirituality, you have to wrap your mind around the idea that you're just not going to figure it out in this life.
That's so beautifully said, Eric. That is so beautifully said.
Like it's a series of questions. It's a series of explaining things in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And people, especially with religion, people like to do this. They like to read spiritual texts and spiritual ideas as literal stories. And a lot of the time, that's completely missing the ball game.
Yeah.
You know, it's we as humans, we have to explain things in a way that will make sense to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is a lot of the time. And there's so much, like I said earlier, that we just don't know. And we have to accept
it kind of, you know. What you just said kind of reminds me of, you know, as a psychic, as a medium, and I, you know, been doing this for a long time, you know, throughout the years, you get these people that come to you and say, I want to be a psychic. How do I do that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of like, you know, teach me how to do this, you know, and they don't understand, like he said, I mean, they don't understand how deep you have to go into, you know, yourself, the shadow work, the understanding, the knowledge, how to explain things to people, how to be professional, maybe even diplomatic. I mean, there's a realm that you can't, you know, it's not a matter of, oh, here, A, B, C, D. And people don't want to take that time to do it anymore, right? Not just with psychics, but with anything. That's like me saying, well, how do I be a doctor? Oh, teach me how to be a doctor. I want to learn in 5 minutes. Okay, good luck. Enjoy. Here's your first surgery, you know.
You mentioned earlier about, I forget exactly what you said, but referenced like the ability to talk to spirits.
Yeah.
At some point. And it kind of, that makes me think too, you know, like that's the kind of thing my entire life, even now, I would roll my eyes at that to a point. But when I think about it, we all do that. I mean, maybe not a spirit, but we hope there's something there because we all make those, we call them wishes, right? What are you wishing to? Who are you wishing to? And you can't stop your mind from doing it. I've tried to like, you know, like in my most there is no God moments. Like I said, I've never really had that. But even back when I was completely apathetic to all this, thought it was nonsense, I would privately wish for things. I would privately make deals. Be like, you know, if this would just happen for me, I'll do this to make up for it. You cut these funny little deals in the forms of internal wishes, right?
Yeah.
Just our ability to do that speaks of another consciousness that can hear and understand us.
Absolutely. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, even the most, you know, strict atheist, if it's their child that's sick, or if it's, you know, somebody that they love that's sick, the first thing they do, hey, God, can you help? You know, that's
even if they don't tell anybody else about it, they're doing it in their head. It's a very human thing. Absolutely.
You know, and it's something that it's very hard to, like you said, you can't stop yourself, you know, and I mean, now I guess if you wanted to, you know, really go the atheist route and you wanted to go more towards science, you could say that it was, you know, part of a quantum physics or a law of attraction type of belief system, I suppose, if you really wanted to, you know, stay within that, in that realm, right? Because our thoughts are created and we've all experienced that.
That's another example of, yes, there's a method, but the method doesn't explain the why.
Right.
Right. That's that to me. That's always been a big problem for me, and a lot of people just seem to like ignore that.
Yeah.
That question, you know, it'll haunt you forever, right? Because there's so many things that you can't fully ever answer. But what I love about it is that it generates a state of consciousness that does keep you uncovering, you know, that does keep you discovering different things or new things, maybe new to you, or it could be new to humanity as a whole. And I feel like even at its base level, just asking why, it really does put you in a much better state than just blindly accepting whatever you're, you know, seeing or being forced to see that's right in front of you. So, you know, I definitely commend you for even asking, why are we not asking why even more? Because it's a good trigger, I think.
You know, and it's interesting too, because on Friday, so I have another show that I do. It's the I Want to Believe show. And this is the I Want to Believe channel. And it was interesting because something that you had said, you know, brought up this thought, and it's that, you know, you don't really want to tell people, you know, especially when you're in a certain place, you know, you don't want to be thought of as crazy, or you don't want to be thought of as like, you know, or whatever. You want to be respected, right? And the man that we had on, Todd Neese, he is a Sasquatch researcher of all things. And a lot of people can sit there and roll their eyes in regards to it, right? You think, oh, Sasquatch, oh, you know, here we go, Bigfoot. But the interesting thing is that, you know, his first experience was when he was with the military. And I really recommend people watching the show because it was really interesting, you know, but basically it was with the military, and they were, you know, doing all kinds of bombing in, you know, in a restricted site. And they were driving through, and there was these three large, massive creatures that not only he saw, but, you know, the driver that he was with in this particular vehicle, and two others, including his commander. And they were literally, you know, primate-like creatures that were just in the middle of, and I mean, the thing is, especially with military, you know, they make sure that these areas are cleared of people. Like, you have responsibility. You can't just go blow up something in the military, you know, in the middle of a forest and not make sure that there's no people around. So it was really interesting that and since then, you know, he's been this researcher. He's been on like 30 different shows, including Discovery Channel and Unsolved Mysteries. But he said that, like, it was hard for him at first. He was like just grateful at the fact that these other three, you know, very strong military dudes that were like, this is fact, you know.
Yeah.
This is how, like, these are military guys. Like, these are not guys that are going to be running around, you know, hey, I saw a UFO, look at me. You know, they're like, I don't think we should talk about this, you know. So to have that,
even then, most aren't going to believe you, even if you do have military witnesses. Most won't.
Yeah, and
I don't talk about this stuff much to this day for this reason.
Oh, absolutely. And he said it was really hard to start coming out about that, you know, in his experience. And, you know, now that he's, you know, been doing this for years, you know, it's obviously this is what he's known for. But, you know, that first time kind of, you know, speaking about it was terrifying to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, well, you know, and they can commit you in the army, right? So they can commit you in the military. So that, you know, that was the other thing.
Yeah.
They can actually, you know, really put you away when you.
And, you know, it puts me like, another reason I don't like to talk about it much is it puts me in a lot of unpleasant conversations in that.
Right. Absolutely.
This happened to me. I've spent hours, days, weeks, months, years trying to put this experience together and what it all meant. And after that much work, I don't really want to tell you and get your 5-minute synopsis and scientific explanation of what you think happened. Right? Like I've got years and hours and weeks of trying to sort this out. Versus you've now been aware of this for 2 minutes, but you've got the scientific information. Like, no,
everyone's an expert.
yeah. So I don't talk about it.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. That's exactly it. Because everybody has, you know, their, like you said, their 5-minute opinion. Oh, well, I saw in ghost hunters that happened.
And you know, what really gets me about that is they're comforting themselves, but they spin it.
Yeah.
They say that I have come up with this convoluted explanation of spirituality because I needed to comfort myself, right? I'm not trying to comfort myself. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this thing. Yeah. The people that don't want to believe this and want to take a 2-second Wikipedia scientific explanation to write it off, they're comforting themselves because then they don't have to deal with the possible reality of a spiritual realm and the implications of that. So the reverse is true. They're comforting themselves, and I avoid that too because, you know, I'm not trying to lose friends. I'm just. Oh no,
that was beautifully explained. I actually, you know, it is like you just kind of opened a world in my head just a moment, like just by saying that, because what you had to say was so true, and we've dealt with this so many times on different levels, you know, throughout. I know with me throughout my life, probably Brandon too, but I think that you just kind of narrowed it down for everybody that has had some sort of experience. Like that was brilliant. Yeah.
Everybody's an expert now. Like we said, they have access to all this stuff. They just, okay, I've seen one thing. I know exactly what this is.
I watched Snack Vegas, so I know everything.
Yeah.
You know? I know how to deal with demons because I watch Ghost Adventures. So I'm going to go running into a house and screaming and, you know, asking for this, that, and the other thing. Like and people don't take the time. They don't take the time to not only understand what they're doing, but the consequences, the possible consequences of the nonsense that, you know, they're could be creating. And that was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on too, is because there are so many people nowadays, you know, that are trying to get investigations or that think that they're, you know, paranormal investigators or think that they're this. And, you know, they basically buy the t-shirt and let's have a group. We're going to buy the t-shirt. We're going to make all t-shirts. And now we're a paranormal group, and they don't understand you know, not only the consequences of what could happen within doing this, not for just them, but possibly the client. You know, can you imagine, Derek, if we had come over to your house with a bunch of Ouija boards and sat there, you know, shaking troll dolls in the air and asking for, I mean, like what kind of but I mean, that's what the kind of stuff that's going on. And I
think that's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
And what's really dangerous about it, right, is 999 times out of 1,000, nothing bad is going to happen. Right. And that's most people's experience, and that's what leads people to think it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
But if you're one of the unfortunate ones that does tap into something you shouldn't play with, and I'll tell you from my sleep paralysis experience, whatever dimension I was in, whatever realm I was in, you don't want that. You don't want, like, we are not capable of, we have been removed and cut off from that realm for a freaking reason. Like, we can't handle it.
It's so true.
To intentionally try to just summon some of that up for some late night party fun is.
It's so true. Like I can't even get over how many times I've heard nonsense coming from, you know, some of these groups or these people or these pretend psychics or mediums or whatever, you know, whatever it is, that they want to classify themselves as or whatever. And you're just in this place of going, oh my God, like, why would you even try to create this chaos and havoc in your life? You know, why would you even want to take that step forward? You know, it's crazy, right?
I think it could be partially a consequence of how I was saying earlier, like, we want answers.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're, like I said, if you're going to get into spirituality on any level, you have to just accept that we're not going to get the answers to a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to find the answers. I think they just have to do it in a way that is not going to, you know, especially when you're involving other people, like a client into the mixture, right? Like, you know, there's that difference between finding out for yourself and maybe doing your own research, do your own investigations, your own whatever. But then when you start, you know, transferring that energy to an innocent family, for instance. That's where those, you know, severe consequences can come through, whether it's for yourself or for the people. And it's scary that, you know, we have them out there, and instead of, and like you said, instead of actually doing the research, they don't want to look through the books. They don't want to do the actual research. They just want to show up at somebody's house and have a bunch of equipment and take pictures.
Yeah.
You know, and there's that huge difference, right? It's like, you know, it's kind of, so I wanted to talk about your podcast a little bit. What made you start the podcast? Let's just, so for those that are watching, Derek has the Prairie Rubbish Podcast. I did put the link in the description box. It's such a fun podcast. I've been on it a couple of times, and what made you start it?
All right. Well, we're entirely switching gears here. It had nothing to do with paranormal or spirituality at all. Essentially, if I can take just 2 minutes to kind of give you the full story here. In 2019, I stumbled, nobody knows this part. This is going to be kind of a odd little bit. I randomly stumbled across a wrestling video on YouTube in 2019. I had been a wrestling fan as a kid, like a teenager, but I hadn't like followed a lick of wrestling in 25 years probably. And I just watched it, and I became briefly fascinated with the idea of developing a character like these wrestlers do, like these over-the-top characters.
Right, yeah, like the hooded mangler or something.
Right, yeah. And I mean, I watched wrestling, like when I was watching wrestling, it was very much the Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Randy Savage.
Bret Hart was my man, I tell you.
Yeah, so like just the idea of these over-top characters and like how it appealed to so many people. And also, like in the years before that, one of my favorite things to do was watch a lot of the political talking heads on YouTube.
Right.
So I kind of got this idea to mishmash the two, to have a podcast that would deal with social and political topics relevant to Western Canadians, which is, you know, that's the region I'm from.
Right.
But the characters that were on the podcast would be these over-the-top characters, kind of like wrestlers.
Okay.
So I started putting this idea for the show together. It would be called the Prairie Rubbish Podcast. And I had a few people like developing characters to like be on this show. And we were just about to launch it when COVID-19 hit in March of 2020, which blew the doors off the whole thing. All of a sudden, people were worried about their jobs. Nobody wanted to contribute money to the project. We were all told to live in our bubbles, so nobody wanted to get together to record the thing. And, you know, like that March, April, May period of 2020, nobody wanted to put any thought into developing this over-the-top character to talk about politics stuff. Like COVID just made everything real serious and real doom and gloom all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So I shelved the project temporarily, figuring eventually this COVID will blow over and we'll resume it. Well, as the summer of 2020 crept up and it became clear that this wasn't just going to fade away, right? I was like, you know what? I need to do this. I think the idea of the over-the-top characters and the wrestling type characters has to go. And whoever wants to start this podcast with me, we're just going to start it. So I started it basically just as a podcast that would be part guest interview, part social and political conversation relevant to Western Canadians, and just see where it went with a couple of people that were willing to still be involved with this. Most people that were originally going to be involved walked away because of COVID. So we got rolling as an audio-only podcast. We had to do it out of my house for the first few episodes.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just evolved with a COVID shut. The first time, like the COVID restrictions prevented us from doing it. I used that time to develop a video podcast instead of an audio-only. We did the video-only for a little while until further COVID restrictions shut us down. And it was just like, you know, a year of shutdowns, and all this eventually led me to just make it a live stream, very similar to your show. So in recent weeks, we've rebooted as a live stream on Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And I think that's how we're going to do it going forward. And it'll be like a mishmash of guest interviews, documentary conversation, and social and political topics relevant to Western Canadians. So far, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to grow it now that we can have people in the comments chiming in.
It is a lot of fun doing the live shows. That's what I found. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
We've just in the last couple of weeks too, we've actually dropped the podcast. We're just Prairie Rubbish Show now because it's not technically a podcast anymore. It's a live stream.
Right.
Yeah.
And how many shows have you guys done? About?
I want to say we got to be getting close to 30.
Oh wow.
I mean, we've been running for a year now. We launched in early July of 2020. And we've been doing it every week with the exceptions of the weeks we were shut down because of COVID restrictions. So I want to say it's around 30 at this point. Only 2 live streams, though, so far. We're still pretty new to the live stream. Was
it a different move from that live stream to the editing? Like, did you find – were you nervous going live for the first time? I think that was with me, right? Like that.
Yeah, that was the show you were on. Was our first live stream. I was nervous I wasn't nervous about going live. I like personally doing it. What I was nervous about was all the technical pieces holding together.
Brendan and I have dealt with that so many times.
Yeah.
You can never predict. You never know when something's gonna mess up, delay, break altogether.
And when the show wasn't live, I had control over a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
If something didn't work, we'd redo it. Or I'd fix it in the edit. That was a common theme, right? Because I was the one that was editing the videos together.
Right.
And live, you lose all that, right? If somebody's internet connection gives out, they disappear for a while.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that. Like the show has to go on. But all in all, I'm loving it, and I hope to stick to the format.
Or your battery goes dead on your laptop, and you're like, I think we've had our challenges. That's for sure. We've definitely,
but it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you right in it.
and I haven't had a lot of commenters yet, but the ones we have, it's an interesting balance. Like I have to balance the getting through all the topics I have for the night, letting everybody have an opportunity to talk, getting some of the chatters, the comments into the show. Like it's a balancing act, and it's like live, and what you do is what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. it's all spontaneous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you guys now? I remember at one point you had said that you were, looking for people that, if they are interested in coming onto the show, how can they contact you?
Thanks for that. Thank you for that. I am at Prairie Rubbish on both Twitter and Facebook. So you can get a hold of me through either one of those at Prairie Rubbish, or you can email me. I am Derek at prairierubbish.ca. Or just, watch the show. Kathy mentioned she's going to put the link in the description of this. Check out an episode. If you think you want to come on, reach out to me. I'm always happy to have guests on. We're live every Thursday night.
What kind of people are you looking for? Anybody specific? Any sort of mode, way of being, profession?
No, not anymore. Early on, we were looking for just people in the Western Canadian community that were doing something worth discussing. But we've kind of dropped that now. We're willing to have anybody come on as long as they're interested in the topics we're going to discuss and want to get involved. That being said, if somebody did have something specific they wanted to discuss, like they were part of an organization or part of a movement or ran a small business, anything like a YouTube channel, even something that they want to discuss, we would happily incorporate an interview about that into the show to promote, whatever it is they're a part of.
Do you have boundaries, limitations on the things and topics you cover, or do you guys just cover everything and anything?
I haven't been pressed. I'm sure I do have boundaries, but they would be pretty I'm not going to turn this into some sort of satanic porn show. So I suppose I do have boundaries, but realistically, no, I'm pretty open and, come on and say your thing. We're certainly not a politically partisan show. You come on and say your piece. I want a variety of opinion, a variety of thought. That's
right.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just given the people that appear regularly, I think we do lean a little bit right of center right now, especially on some of the social issues, but that's not my intent. My intent isn't to have a show that is partisan politically. Right. So the more people of various viewpoints that come on, great. And I'd like to have a lefty that was a permanent cast member too. I just haven't stumbled across one at this point, right?
Maybe you will after this. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Somebody who will be interested, right?
Well, that's what we need. We need people on either side willing to communicate and to actually listen to each other and, debate instead of just jamming things down people's throats. Right? Ridiculous.
Yeah. I never go into a conversation about anything when it's political or social stuff. I never go into a conversation trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm waiting to see if somebody else can convince me that I'm wrong. Right? Show me something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
And that's what I like the best is those moments where you are flipped. I mean, just in my, I'm 46 now. In my lifetime, I've been flipped from left to right a couple of different times.
Mm-hmm.
And my position is left or right, sometimes depending on the issue.
Right.
And a lot of that is just experience and talking to people, listening to people that are more read or smarter than I am, talk about an issue. I want my mind to be changed. I'm not out there trying to convert anybody to anything. I'm out there to be converted to what I think is right. So convince me. Come on the show, say your piece, convince me.
I love that.
I
love that. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun to watch. So if you guys get a chance, definitely tune in on it was Thursdays at 7:00.
Thursdays, 7 p.m. Mountain.
Perfect. Derek, thank you. Brandon, actually, before we go, Brandon, where can people reach you if they want to get a reading?
Hop on over to thedreamteacher.com. You can get readings, download some hypnosis, shoot me a message if you're not sure what to do. Maybe do the hypnosis, then book a session so you can be fully ready to purge and cleanse. And maybe if you've had some kind of sleep paralysis thing, I even have training and working with entity attachment in my hypnosis. So we can do it all here. We can do it all. Thedreamteacher.com.
Perfect. And if you guys want to contact me, you can reach me through oracleintuitions.com or my email at oracleintuitions1111@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow me on my social media pages where you can also contact me at Oracle Intuitions. Derek, where can they reach you again? Just to get that out one more time.
My email is derek@prairierubbish.ca. You can catch the show on our YouTube channel, which you can link to from our website, which is prairierubbish.ca. And I am at Prairie Rubbish on Twitter and Facebook.
It has been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you for sharing.
This was fun.
It is fun, right?
Yeah. I was a little nervous coming on. I mentioned to the Kathy pre-show about this. I was a little nervous just in that this isn't stuff I discussed with people.
Yeah.
These aren't conversations I have.
I appreciate you making yourself vulnerable to talk about this because I know other people have experienced it too, and they just want to know, any information they can find to get to their steps of peace and comfort in their home. I'm sure it helps.
Well, it was fun. I was happy to meet you, Brandon.
You as well, Derek. Thank you
for coming on. Derek, have an
amazing
day. I almost confused Derek and Brandon at the same time. I'm coming up with a name there. So I was thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have an amazing week. We will see you soon.